Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about spacing and the way that we handle spacing with our HTML elements in HTML is with, I just said really weird sentence, but the way we handle that is with margin and padding. I did warn you guys that I had a weird speech impediment and I'm just not a good speaker. Um, so, uh, you've been warned, so you're going to have to deal with a lot of ums and stuttering and whatever. But we're going to learn a lot if you stick with me, I promise. Just don't learn English from me, okay? All right, so if you guys only knew my background, you would be proud of me. But all right, so here's the deal. uh, we're going to create a new file here. So let's just go. Oh, let me switch my screen here. So go here and let's create a new file in the root directory, and we're going to just call it spacing.html. And I put that inside of my styles directory. Awesome. That's one of the reasons that I cannot stand VS Code is because it's real annoying. So this needs to be not in our styles directory, but just in the root directory here. And let's go ahead and navigate there. So in our URL bar, just go ahead and type spacing. So replace index.html with spacing.html. We have a blank page here. So let's go ahead and create our document. And let's go ahead and give it HTML, and then inside of there, let's do a head. Inside there, let's do our title. So let's just call this spacing. One more that we need to be adding here that I haven't mentioned yet is there's what's called a meta tag. Meta. And we need to be setting our character set. We're not going to go over what that is too much right now, but just go ahead and get in the habit of creating that. And that will basically set our character, what our characters are being encoded and decoded as. So just get used to typing that in there. Don't worry too much about what that is right now, but just start doing it out of habit. And then the body here, what I want to do is let's create a div. And let's give this a div an ID equal to outer. Okay. Then what we're going to do is inside of there, let's create a div with a class. Actually make that an element here. We're going to do a div with a class equal to inner. And inside there, I'm going to give it just some text. And let's do first inner div. And then we'll do one more div here, and we'll do second inner div. And let's give that a class also of inner. Okay, so now we have our HTML. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. It looks normal right now. You can't really tell that we have a surrounding div because we're not doing anything with the CSS with that. So let's change that real quick. Go ahead and go to your styles.css. And now let's add a selector for our outer div, and let's just give that so we can easily see what's going on. Let's give that a background color of red and refresh, and nothing's happening here. What did I do wrong? ID outer. I must have something misspelled here, and I'm not seeing it as quickly as you probably. Oh, I know what's going on. So it collapses. No, that's not what's happening. Background color red. And actually, while we're here, let's just use our new format we learned about in the last video. Let's use a hex code. Dude, oh, I know what's happening here. Dun, 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 dun. We forgot to include it here with our link tag. So let's link that in. We'll give it a style sheet here, a rel of style sheet, and it's in our styles directory, and it is called styles.css. So we actually have to include our CSS for it to work. There we go. Excuse me, I'm under the weather. My brain is real foggy. But we must carry on. I must give you guys a tutorial every day until this is done. That's my commitment. So here we go. We have this outer div, and this outer div doesn't have any space. You can see that the text is pretty much tucked up right to the top and left of this. And if we had text long enough, it would be all the way against the right as well. The reason that this goes all the way across the page is because it is a block level element, so it's a div. But our inner divs don't have anything, so let's change that a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about our first sort of spacing that we can do is padding. So if we give it we go ahead and give it a property of padding right here, and we'll give that a value, let's say, of 12 pixels. Pixel is a unit that we can use. There are many other units like percentages and ems and rems and all of that we can talk about later, but one of the easiest to understand is just pixels. So we're going to go ahead and hit refresh, and now there are 12 pixels of spacing on the inside of our element here. So we applied that to our outer div. So our outer div, if I right click on this and inspect it here, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the outer div here, and if we hold that there, we can see that dark brown spacing there. That is actually, it's green, but it's over top of the red, so that turns out to be kind of a brown color. But you can see up there in the browser we have spacing on our outer div, so it stops our inner content from going up, and it creates a space there right through there, and that goes all the way around. So when we just say padding, it adds an equal amount of padding to the top, right, bottom, and left of our element. Now what we could do is we can actually define those individually by saying padding dash top, and we can say on the top I want 12 pixels, and then on the and you won't be able to see this because my text isn't long enough, but we can just say padding right 32 pixels. Now again, our text isn't long enough, so that won't show up really. But our padding bottom, let's double that. Let's say on the bottom, I'd really like to have even more. Let's do 32 pixels. And the padding on the left, I want that to be, well, let's just do 0 pixels and have it tucked all the way to the left. So if I hit refresh now, we have 12 on the top, 32 on the right, which you can't see, but there's 32 pixels of padding on the bottom and 0 on the left. And now let's just change that on the left there to 10 and refresh. And now we have 10 pixels on the left, 12 on the top, 32 on the bottom, and 32 on the right. Again, we can't really tell that, but it's there. Okay, so that's one way we can define each space on each side separately. There is a shortcut we could do there. That would be equivalent to doing padding, and then we can actually define all of these in one line. So we could say 12 on the top, and then do a space, and then do a right as space, and then we'll do our bottom, so we'll say 28, and then we'll do our left, and we'll just say 8 pixels. I said 8 and typed 9. Okay, so if I refresh now, that's pretty much the same. We have 12 on the top, 32 on the right, 28 on the bottom, and 8 on the left right there. Now, the way to remember this shorthand would be like a clock: top, right, bottom, left. So you start at the top and you go clockwise around. So top, right, bottom, left. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay, so that is how you can remember that. So that's padding. Padding is spacing that is on the inside of an element. I'm going to go ahead now and let's create our class to target our inner, because remember we have these two inner divs. And let's make the background color something different so that we can easily see the difference between our inner and outer divs here. So I'm going to make this one green. So again, let's use our hexadecimal. And, oh, you know what? Let's use RGB just to get some more practice in with that one. So remember the first value is red, so I'm going to put 0. And then we'll do 255. You know what? Let's do something more. Let's do 175 and 0. Like that. And now you can see that our inner divs are green. Let's go ahead and also give some padding to that. So let's do padding, and let's give the inner divs padding of, let's do 10 pixels all the way around. So we want 10 pixels of padding all the way around here. Okay, so now we have 10 pixels of padding on the inside of our inner divs. And you can see it looks like there's a lot more on the in between the two, but that's because there's 10 pixels of padding on the first inner div and 10 pixels of padding on the second inner div. And that brings me to our next sort of padding. What if I want to put our spacing rather? What if I want to put spacing between the first and second divs so they're not just running together like that? Well, we could do that. We could do what's called margin. And margin is spacing on the outside of a div. So padding is on the inside, margin is on the outside. So let's go ahead and just type in something. Let's give this 10 pixels and hit refresh. And now you can see that we have 10 pixels of space around these elements, okay? And by the way, that will also affect this side over here. So we have 10 pixels of margin here, and we have some padding as well. So those are adding together to make a little bit more space. What's kind of unique though is for some reason there's 10 pixels of margin on the top and the bottom of this, but that's collapsing down to just those margins can collapse and just make 10 pixels total. So it's not doubling up down there. But the difference between this margin here and padding here will add up on the top, right, bottom, and left there. Okay, so let's, just to make that look a little nicer, I left the padding a little weird on the outer div. Let's just go ahead and make that more unified and just say 12 pixels here. Okay. So now this is a little more even and it looks a little nicer. So that's what we're going to do there. So the margin, and we can make this more if we wanted more space, like this. The other thing we could do, and I didn't show this shorthand yet, is let's say I want 20 pixels on the top and bottom, but I don't want all that space on the left and right. Well, what I could do is I could either do 20, 10 for top, right, and then 20, and then 10 again. And that would work, and that will lower the left and right spacing to look a little nicer. The other thing you could do is you can actually shorthand this like this, and this shorthand would be top and bottom would be the same, and the left and the right would be the same. So if I could actually put this at 0 pixels because there is some padding already in this upper. So now it could be like this if I wanted. So you could do that. You could define this any way you want here. But just keep in mind that the first number, if you just have 2, this is going to combine the top and the bottom will be controlled by the first one, and the left and the right will be controlled by the second one. And if you have all 4 of them, then it will be like I told you, like the clock, top, right, bottom, left. Okay. So there's different ways of writing this stuff. Again, we could even do margin bottom, and let's just do something obscene like 34 pixels. And this will only control the bottom margin. So margin and padding can be written the exact same way. It's just instead of margin, you type padding. So padding or margin, okay? So that's all different ways that you can write padding and margin And just keep in mind, so you don't get confused, that padding is on the inside of an element and margin is the space on the outside of that. Another way you can remember it too is the inspector actually gives us a good illustration. So this blue box is our element, and then, or I'm sorry, this is our content inside of our element, the blue box, right? So let me highlight these inner divs to show that more. See, the blue is the content inside, so it's just the text, okay? The padding is inside of the element, and then we have our border, which in our case, we don't have a border right now. But then the margin, if I highlight over that, is on the outside. It's the space on the outside of that element. So our element that we have selected in our thing right now is the inner div. It's the first inner div. And I can go through and see how much margin, padding, and what the inner content is. So that's how spacing works in HTML and CSS. I hope that makes sense. If you're a little confused about it, it's just going to take some practice messing around with it. So I would actually encourage you to take some time and go through and play with this margin and padding. And we're gonna be using margin and padding so much throughout our projects coming up that you're gonna understand it, I promise, by the end. But it'd be fun just to play around and try to understand it. So I hope that makes sense, and I will see you guys in the next video.